What do you recommend as far as feeding windows and frequency is concerned?
If you want to lose some weight, skip the supper. Have a breakfast, have a lunch, and then have nothing from lunch all the way to supper. That would be the ideal way to lose weight, reset fat burning, and do a level of intermittent fasting. You have to get your body to a place where you can actually have a really good meal and then have the energy last and be a good fat burner.
And we are live. Dr. John, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks. Good to be here.
Glad to have you, man. Glad to have you. So we are kind of in this weird era of society where people are trying to bridge the gap between Western medicine, Eastern medicine, make sense of it all through all the conflicting information online. And I feel like you bring a lot to the table from the Eastern side. Talk to me about that. Like, what's the backstory on what got you interested in that realm of thinking to begin with?
Actually, what happened to me was I was training for an Ironman triathlon back in the early 1980s, and I went to my kind of Ayurvedic yoga meditation lecture. And afterwards, I went up to the guy and asked him, I said, "So what do you think about doing an Ironman from the Ayurvedic yoga meditative perspective?" And he looked at me like, "What is that?" And I had to describe to him, this Ironman thing. And he looked at me and he said, "Why do you do that?" Because it's like a ridiculous amount of, as an Indian man, and that concept just doesn't fly. It doesn't understand why would anybody run on, 26 miles and all that. And I didn't really have an answer for that. So he looked at me and he said, "Do you meditate?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually I do meditate." And he goes, "Do you sleep when you meditate?" I go, "Yeah, deeply. It's great. I guess it's knockout sleep. It's great." And he looked at me and goes, "Meditation is not sleep." Because meditation is a state of being alert and resting at the same time. You're conked out. You're exhausted. You're doing way too much. I was like, "Oh, wow." And he goes, and I said, "Well, what if I was able to do all this training and not sleep when I meditate? Would that be okay?" And he was like, yeah, that would be okay. He basically wanted to get rid of me, but that was like what I needed to hear. So I started, absolutely true story. I wrote this in the last chapter of my Body, Mind, Sport book, where I wrote about the research we did on this. It's called Jet Fuel, where I started going to meditation retreats like once a month on a weekend. You do yoga, breathe, meditate, eat, yoga, breathe, meditate. It's like, that's all you do. You can't even go for a run. It was like really like sedentary.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went for a 2-week one of those versions, I came back and I was like literally shut out of this kind of runner's high cannon where I was in the zone and I was like competing at a significantly higher level. Many of my friends, I was in the South Bay at that time training triathlons and training and treating a lot of the top triathletes in LA. And they all thought I was on steroids. They thought I got a new bike. Some of my friends actually got and started learning to meditate, that the idea of recovery and rest was like the key. It's like the eye of the storm. The bigger the calm, the more powerful the winds. Well, I slipped into that for 3 solid months. And it wasn't just that my performance went up like dramatically. I was actually winning in my age group and getting medals and things, which was not what I was doing before, clearly. My bandwidth academically, I was in my clinical internship at that time, it just blew up. I could handle so much more academically. It was like I had this, I was in the zone on every level. And then after 3 months, it just disappeared. And
Mm-hmm.
and I was like so fascinated by that. I started reading books about the runner's high and the psychology of it all. And I ended up going to India in 1986 for like a 4-week vacation, try to figure out what's going on there. Ended up coming back and training medical doctors, because I ended up staying there for about 1.5 years, closed my practice, came back, and now I've been kind of teaching the ancient medical wisdom and modern science for all these years. So that was the thing that really got me into this kind of less is more approach. We don't have to kill ourselves to become, to reach a certain level of potential. Like right now, it's really cool. We're watching the Olympics and everything. But when you look at, other than like people like Lindsey Vonn, but you look at most athletes, they're done by 29, you know what I mean? This we squeeze out as much performance as we can by stress recovery. We're limited by how much stress we can endure. But we just and we cross train and try to get the body to get in shape, training different muscles and in different ways to not wear the body out. But that's like really good for world records. But what about after 29, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90? We just seem to want to squeeze out the best and then we just throw you out to pasture. Where the idea is longevity. And that's kind of what I try to bring to the table. I did with my book, By My Sport, where we did research on this. And we found that when you go into uh, an exercise session with your mouth closed, breathing through your nose. We published these studies in the early 1990s. The brain goes into a meditative calm, a coherent state. So all of a sudden, the runner's high is my best race, it's my easiest race. Well, I definitely felt that. And it's now scientifically validated by states of coherence, brainwave, respiratory coherence, where the body's not just, it's like, think about it like if you're listening to some guy who just started playing the drums, it's not going to sound pretty. But then all of a sudden, they put it into coherence and into rhythm and it's music. That is exactly scientifically what happens in our physiology. When you still the nervous system, like I got that rest, and then you create this kind of body coherence where the body's systems are functioning in harmony with each other, like music. It's really exactly like that. It's called coherence. And then really good things happen to you, including the runner's high, best race is my easiest race. So life doesn't have to be a struggle when you're going with the natural cycles downstream with the current of life. You feel like it's easy, but when you're going against the grain, life's a struggle. Every day you're exhausted. You got to wake up every morning mustering the energy, recovering on the weekends. And that is sort of, unfortunately, what our culture has done. It's driven us into a state of incoherence, to a state of exhaustion. And, we're constantly borrowing Peter to pay Paul to make things happen. And that's kind of what I found the ancient wisdom was about, aligning and being in harmony and in resonance with the circadian rhythms, which have an impact on your microbiome, which have an impact on how your brain functions, which have an impact on breathing and brainwave coherence and how it all starts to function like you're in the eye of the storm, right? And the bigger the calm that you feel on the inside, the more powerful and productive you are on the outside. And that's kind of what got me going in this whole thing was I totally experienced it. And I've been trying to chase it from an experience level with my patients and with the science ever since.
I totally agree with you. I feel like there's been chapters in my life where I've been hyper focused and everything just was in this flow state, and obviously productivity and effectiveness was amplified and everything just seemed to mesh together. It was like a symphony, so to speak, as opposed to like this, white knuckling through it. Out of curiosity, what do you think you were doing differently during that 3 month span where everything became so fluid? And then what changed afterwards where you just lost it? And then that kind of compelled you to figure out how to find it again. But what do you think changed tangibly in that moment acutely?
Well, I came back from this 2-week version of yoga, breathe, meditate, and that's when I just came out of that. And I just feel it was coherence. I mean, how I remembered the first thing that happened to me. I was training less, more specific. Instead of going on 100-mile bike rides and 20-mile runs in the Hollywood Hills, I would do everything really focused and more intense but shorter. And I remember worked out with a couple of my friends. One of them was an Olympic volleyball player, and we would hop up bleachers on one leg until you could basically not until you exhaust that leg, and then you do the other leg. And I'm not a jumper; he was a jumper, and we would do this weekly. He knew that I was not the jumper. I got in there after that 2-week thing, and I started hopping up these stairs on one leg. And my two friends who were incredible athletes, they had fatigued their right leg and their left leg, and I'm still trying to fatigue my right leg. I couldn't fatigue it. I could keep going up and down, up and down, up and hopping. And they were like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I'm going, "I don't know, but I just got back from this meditation thing, and it sort of blew my mind." So I think what happened was, you dip the dye in the cloth of that still calm lake and you get this incredible coherence, but then you go out of that lake and then the world starts to catch up, all the stress and life and exams and school and it starts to wear off. So, the message to me was, keep dipping the dye, the cloth in that dye of that source of where you come from, that calm. That's the eye of the storm. This is a law of nature. Solar systems have planets spinning around a sun in the center. Atoms have the same thing. The runner's high has always been, right, my best race is my easiest race. That's what's been described. We know from the science that the brain goes into coherence during this vigorous activity, which is exactly calm and dynamic activity coexisting. And that's actually we proved in our study. We measured not only brainwave coherence and alpha production, meditative brainwaves during activity, we actually measured the fight or flight nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So normally what happens when you work out is your fight or flight, goes up 100% and your parasympathetic rejuvenative system goes to zero. But when we did it with breathing through the nose, the parasympathetic only went down 50%, and the sympathetic did go up 100%, only went up 50%. So the two opposite nervous systems were coexisting. Literally, that defines the coexistence of opposites, the dynamic nervous system and the calm, silent nervous system coexisting together. That is the runner's high, in addition to alpha brainwaves in the brain versus beta brainwaves in the brain, as well as brainwave coherence, which means that all the parts of the brain were doing the same thing. A lot of times when you look at brainwave activity, you have this part of the brain doing one thing, this part of the brain doing another thing. There's different brainwave patterns in different parts of the brain. Coherence means it's all doing the same thing. And so I was so excited when I saw that research, because we literally prove the coexistence of opposites, like the eye of the storm concept, where the more calm you can create, the more you can meditate or pray or rest or go for a walk in the woods or just dial down the phones and all the incoming and just still your nervous system. That translates into being able to be more productive in the winds of the storm, in the craziness of our life.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm a big fan of nasal breathing as well. Like when I sleep, I mouth tape, and then when I run, I do trail runs every other day, and I only breathe through my nose, which is challenging. But once you get to the point where you're acclimated to it, that just seems normal. And then when I get into this flow state with that, I'm just thinking about things. Those are my most productive thought moments, and I'm just in this Zen state. So 100% agree with you on all fronts there. What is Ayurvedic? Like when you describe or define that, because I didn't really even know what that term was until I started digging into your background. So where does that stem from? Indian medicine originally, right?
So Ayurveda, Ayur means life, Veda means science or truth. So it's the science or the truth of your life, basically. So it's an ancient medical system, somewhat similar to traditional Chinese medicine. It's their traditional system, which really simply put is an in-depth study of the natural cycles of nature. So what they did was they studied nature and they said, oh, guess what? Birds fly south, whales migrate according to the seasons. Certain foods are harvested at certain times of the year. Now we have science say, guess what? The bugs, the microbes in the soil change from one season to the next. The bugs in that soil get to the food that you eat in that season, and they inoculate your gut with the right bugs for the right season. Two, for example, according to the science, dissipate heat in the summer. The bugs on the fresh vegetables and the fruits of summer just help your body dissipate heat. The bitter roots and the spring greens in the spring are very austere and astringent, and they swab up the mucus, keep you from getting allergies in allergy season. In the winter, you have nuts and seeds in the fall and higher protein, higher fat in the summer, and we're in the winter rather, and they boost immunity, and that's the good science. So the bugs that come onto the food from the soil that change with the seasons because the sunlight is changing, that is what makes our microbiome function in harmony, in resonance, in coherence with the rest of the body. But, we just eat whatever we want, whenever we want, the same food every day of the year. No human ever did that until refrigeration, really. But now we do it in all the time. And that's what's so cool about Ayurveda was and that's just one example. They talked about circadian rhythms before they could see them. They described the microbiome before microscopes. And they mentioned that there's good bugs that are invisible and there's bad bugs that are invisible. This is what they said thousands of years ago. And they said, don't go killing the bad bugs, change the environment, change the ecology, and let the good bugs take care of business for you, because the environment is so delicate. If you try to kill one, you're going to kill all. These are concepts we're just beginning to figure out now, and barely, because we still have antibiotics that clobber everything. Not that we don't want antibiotics, but we clearly have overused them in a point where we've got these super bugs and things like that. And the wisdom just keeps going on and on and on and on. In terms of, that's what I started writing about, was the ancient medical wisdom of Ayurveda and the modern science. I thought I'd write 1 or 2 articles, and we've got over 1,500 articles. They talked about the lymphatic system as a system of longevity. We think of the lymph system as the system that is involved in cancer. But literally buried in the medical journals are studies after studies after studies of why and how important the lymphatic system is for our longevity. It's trying to carry your immune system, trying to deliver fatty acids to every cell of your body for energy, for hormone production. So a lot of people have lymphatic congestion, can't deliver the fatty acids to muster up the hormones we need. So we just give you HRT and give you hormone supplementation, as opposed to fixing the reason why you can't make hormones, because you're not delivering the fatty acids properly, right? Studies show that long-haul COVID the early studies of long-haul COVID were linked directly to congestion of the brain's lymphatic system, which dumps 3 pounds of trash out of your head every year while you sleep. That's only been recently discovered, that we even have a lymph and what's called glymph system in your brain. But studies show that the pump for that lymphatic system is your diaphragm, which is a breathing muscle, right? Nose breathing is so key to that, right? And if you can't breathe during COVID, you're not going to pump the cerebrospinal fluid, so the trash is going to build up in your brain, and the brain is the master computer, which is regulating an immune response, and it can send either too many or too few fire trucks to the immune event, and now you pay a price. Well, they talked about that thousands of years ago. We're just beginning to understand that. And they even talked about how to decongest your brain, lymph, and lymphatic systems, which is completely not a thing in Western medicine. There's no medical application of all the research that's in the journals about the lymphatic system. But when you look at the ancient wisdom, they were all over that. They were like, hey, there are ways through breathing, through techniques of doing techniques like Nasal to clean out the brain lymphatic. There's all these really cool ways. There's herbs for it that can clean out the brain. And studies now show congestion of the brain's lymph system, which is the longevity system, according to Ayurveda, is linked to, according to Western medicine, anxiety, depression, cognitive decline, inflammation, infection, poor sleep, and autoimmune concerns, which is like, wow, that's a lot of stuff that's caused by congestion of the master computer's lymph detox system. And that's caused because the diaphragm stopped functioning. And in a recent study, you're a nose breather, 91% of athletes that were tested did not have a diaphragm that was relaxing and contracting fully. So none of us do. So when you do your trail runs and you're doing your nose breathing, you're strengthening your diaphragm you're not only just getting nasal, paranasal sign activation of nitric oxide, you're not just getting, a more efficient parasympathetic activation of respiration, you're also strengthening your diaphragm, which is the muscle that even the best athletes don't have. And the reason for that, Robert, is because every time that we get stressed out in our life, we breathe a little different, right? We get stressed. And then that breath becomes a little more normal. And then another stress comes along, we change how we breathe, that becomes normal. And next thing you know, without even knowing it, as you get older, your rib cage gets tight, because the rib cage job is one thing, squeeze the air out. The diaphragm's job is contract and suck air in and open up this cage. But over time, with more fight or flight in our life, the rib cage ultimately wins that war. And now we're breathing shallow into fight or flight receptors. Life's become an emergency. It's a degenerative process. You lose the diaphragmatic function, which, again, buried in the medical journals, is the number one pump of your body's lymphatic system. Studies show that if you strengthen your diaphragm with what Western medicine calls maximum inspiratory breathing techniques, It can reverse your heartburn, GERD, reflux, indigestion. It can lower your blood pressure faster than the Western drugs in just 3 minutes. Women with breast cancer have more congestion of the anterior diaphragmatic lymph nodes. The diaphragm is the pump of the cerebral spinal fluid, which is the brainwashing fluid. So when you can't breathe the way you were designed when you were 10 and now you're 70 or whatever, you lose that slow pumping system of your lymph. And that's why, they were so right on when they said the lymph system is directly linked to longevity because it starts within your digestive system. That's where the lymph starts. And if that's broken, and clearly more than 75% of the population have digestive imbalances, and all we're being told to do in the world of digestion is stop eating wheat, stop eating dairy, stop eating nuts, seeds, grains, beans, legumes, nitrates, oxalates, just take out, take out, take out. I'm like, wait a minute. This is stuff that our ancestors ate for thousands of years. I mean, I get the glyphosate thing, obviously, but more importantly is our digestive strength, which is also our ability to detoxify, has been dramatically compromised because of pesticides and stress and fight or flight, which tells your body, don't digest your food, get up a tree, save your life. That's what the nervous system is being told. Don't digest, get up a tree. It's a fight or flight situation. So we've done a bang up job telling the body don't digest. And one last thing, I'll quote a study for you that said if you don't break down your protein, your gluten, and the fats, the good fats and the environmental pollutants to the tune of 70 million tons per year, according to the EPA, dumped in our atmosphere, you don't break them down in your stomach and liver and gallbladder, they will go into your intestinal tract and they'll be too big to get into your blood. They'll get uptaken, unfortunately, into the collecting ducts of your lymph, and they'll create extra congestion around the lymph around your belly, which is the lion's share of lymph in your body, which is gut immunity, 70% of your immune response. And that's the beginning of lymphatic congestion. It then goes into your skin-associated lymph. Your skin age faster, get rashes, hold on to water. It goes into your brain lymph, creates brain fog. All these things, the brain grain thing, that whole thing, it's not wheat was not the issue. It was the inability to break it down. And if you can't break wheat down, you're not breaking a lot of other proteins down as well. They're going incompletely digested. They will act as irritants to the lining of your gut. They will find their way into the garbage can, which is your lymphatic vessels, and they'll begin to congest your lymph. Now I can't get the fatty acids for hormones. Now I can't get the fatty acids for energy. Now I can't take the trash out. I can't deliver an immune response because the immune system is literally stuck in traffic because it's carried by your lymphatic system. So it's kind of like, I just think that taking some of the ancient wisdom and then the modern science and putting them together is like a really good place for us to start because, as you know, science alone is not enough. I mean, coffee can be good. It can be bad. Wheat can be good. Wheat can be bad. You name it. Protein. Everybody's saying we should be at a gram of protein per pound of body weight. This is like the new fad. We are in a fad of that right now. But there's studies that say that less protein is just as good as this high protein. I mean, there's science on both sides. Who do you believe? It's only recently that anyone ever said you should be at a gram of protein per pound of body weight, right? That's brand new science. So what do we do? Well, I think that's where you look back to the ancient wisdom. You look at the centenarians who live. What do they eat? Are they eating a gram of protein per pound of body weight? No. So that's what I love about it is we have time-tested wisdom that is backed by science. That's a safe place, and it doesn't change. I wrote a book called The Three-Season Diet back in the year 2000. It was about eating with the seasons. You know what? That diet hasn't changed in 26 years. Every other diet has changed dramatically in the last 26 years. We went from keto to high protein to low protein to high carb. We keep changing, but that's what's beautiful in ancient wisdom is you've got something that's been around for thousands of years. Don't you think we should study that and then find science to back that? And then I feel like that's a great plan. That's what I do at Lifespot on our website. I try to provide that starting point. People go, hey, here's some logic and some science. Let's start here before we go on to the next greatest, latest fad.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of, looking at what's been done and proven effective for generations and generations, then pairing that with the science as opposed to living in a bubble or being dogmatic. When it comes to going upstream as far as possible and having like proactive, actionable steps taken, it sounds as though controlling breathing is probably one of the biggest levers one can pull to improve digestion, just everything downstream from that.
I think it's a great place to start. I think most people don't realize that they are slowly losing respiratory efficiency. And you said it when you first started nose breathing. I always, when I first started teaching that back in the kind of the mid 80s, I started teaching that. I would tell people, be prepared to suffocate because you're not going to be breathing through your nose the way you did when huffing and puffing through your mouth. But within usually about 3 weeks, that dramatically changes. When I first started teaching this, I taught a course in one of the parks in North Boulder Park here in Boulder, and it was a free course. It was like every Wednesday morning, we would teach this course. People would come, anybody could come and go. And one time, these fire trucks drove up, and these guys got their masks on and their tanks on, and they came walking over, and they said, with their gas masks on and everything, and they said, "I'm here for the class." I said, "You're here for the class? Really?" And they were like, "Yeah." I go, "One of our young firemen has been coming to your class, and we have competitions to see who can run up these hills and how long a tank can last.
Mhm.
The record is like 28 minutes, and this kid did it in 36 minutes. He blew the record up, and he said it was because he learned nose breathing from you, and 1 minute can save a life. We're talking, 7, 8 minutes. This is game changing. So for the next couple of weeks, I had fire trucks coming every week, and from Denver all the way up to Boulder to actually learn this technique. I ended up doing an in-service in the Denver Fire Department about just teaching them how to breathe, while they're in the heat of battle. And that's calm, and that dynamic activity and the calm, or the stress and the calm coexisting, is what was the game changer for them. So yeah, I think just getting out there, and one of my favorite exercises is go for a walk. One, count how many steps you take for your inhalation through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps for your inhalation, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Count how many steps you take for the exhalation, and make your goal at least 10 steps for the inhale and then 15 to 20 steps for the exhale. Keep trying to lengthen that exhale. That will give you more time during the exhale, more time for carbon dioxide to build up and get your body comfortable with a little bit of a comfortable breath hold. And that CO2 is the trigger. Rising CO2 is the trigger to get the oxygen to leave your hemoglobin in your blood and drive oxygen into your brain, into your muscles, into your tissues. And most of us walk around because we shallow breathe. We do something called over breathing. And we don't even know we're doing this. Most people don't know that you're even become a shallow breather because rib cage gets tight, becomes normal. But one study showed that 75% of the oxygen that folks were breathing in, they were breathing that oxygen out unused. So we just keep driving more oxygen into the system. You go to the doctor, they put an oximeter on your finger and you're 98% saturation, because you're fine, but you're so inefficient. You're breathing in 75% of what you breathe in, you're breathing out unused. And when you're blowing off all that oxygen that you can't jam into your blood anymore because it's already saturated, you're blowing off excess amounts of carbon dioxide. So what happens is the oxygen levels go to 98% saturation, which is normal, but your CO2 plummet. And that's the perfect storm for anxiety, which is why when people have a panic attack, what do? They put a paper bag over their mouth and they rebreathe, their carbon dioxide, CO2 levels rise, and their anxiety goes away. So high oxygen, low CO2 is the perfect storm for more of the fight or flight stress. Learning how to slow your breath down, hold your breath, which is like Vedic techniques. Pranayama means prana means breath. Yam means to hold, pause, or extend your breath. That's what that was. That is the definition of it. So as you begin to be more comfortable, a little longer, slower, CO2 levels rise. Not only do you get calm, but that triggers the release of the oxygen into your tissues. Because when you're high oxygen and low CO2, the bond between the oxygen and the CO2 and the hemoglobin is super tight, which means many
Mm.
folks are walking around hypoxic, not having enough oxygen in their blood. And that becomes, you know, an accelerated aging process, which nobody really wants. And you can completely change that by breathing. So you're 100% right. Starting with the breathing is a great place to start.
Hello, y'all. Robert Sikes, the founder of the Savage Perspective Podcast, the host of the Savage Perspective Podcast. As y'all know, we do not roll ads throughout the podcast. This is not an ad technically, but I'm going to throw it in there just in case. The reason I don't put ads in here is because I don't want y'all to be distracted with minutes and minutes of just irrelevant content for me to make a buck. That's not good for y'all. I don't want to be inauthentic like that. However, I would be remiss if I didn't point y'all towards a great resource. So all of the guests that I bring onto the show are designed to give y'all insight, give you information, give you value that allows you to optimize your health from a ketogenic standpoint. I've built out a resource that takes everything I've learned over the years as a podcast host, as a professional natural bodybuilder, as a coach in the space, and I've compiled all that into a very, very comprehensive system, which also includes a community, a membership community from an accountability standpoint. It's got a ton of resources like a free workout app. It's got a AI that's built out based off of all of my content, so it's not giving you conflicting information. And the program has over 150 videos that breaks down all the details as to how to manipulate your macros, optimize your metabolism, build muscle, lose fat, all the good stuff that y'all are striving to do. And also, since I don't do ads on the podcast, all of the affiliate discount links that I have for various different brands live in this program as well. That literally pays for the cost in and of itself. So if you're interested in doing a deeper dive, actually using these tools and reaching your highest self, check out ketobodybuilding.com.
And I feel like from a breathwork standpoint, as it pairs with nutrition, like if you are eating food, habitually, hedonically in this, fight or flight state, your body's not going to absorb all that nutrition to begin with. And it's probably not going to be nearly as satiating. So people are just led to overconsume in general. So can you kind of speak to why you think we are finding ourselves in a bit of an obesity epidemic as it sits currently? Because I think some of it would be satiation driven from, not fully absorbing the food that they are taking. Plus the quality of the food is obviously lackluster as well.
Yeah, you're right. Think about this, right? Metabolic syndrome, which is, high blood sugar, high blood pressure, extra weight around your belly, high cholesterol, and low HDL levels is kind of the epidemic of our time, and extra weight around your belly, right? So that's the obesity part of it. When you're under stress, fight or flight stress, without even realizing, just breathing shallow, breathing into the upper receptors where the predominance of fight or flight receptors are. They're on the woods type breathing, right? Without even knowing it, we're all doing it. That tells your body life's a little bit more of an emergency. In an emergency situation, your body's going to take all that cholesterol and put more of it into the blood so I can make stress-fighting hormones with it. That's what makes stress hormones, is cholesterol. It's going to take the sugar and say, put more of that sugar into the blood so I can get up a tree faster to save my life because it's good energy. It's going to say, increase the blood pressure so I can get up the tree faster. And any reserve fuel you can find, stick it under the mattress, is reserve fat or fuel. So in case this war never ends, I'm ready. This is what the body's been doing. Now, okay. So, and then when we look at the studies, say, okay, if it's all caused by stress, what if de-stressing would fix all that? And you know what? I wrote articles about this. I was blown away. I was like, study after study after study that yoga, breathing, prayer, meditation, they all de-stress you. Going for a walk in the woods de-stress you, and they reverse all aspects of metabolic syndrome. And what else does stress do? It completely alters the production of your stomach acid. So when your stomach acid is altered, the food you eat isn't going to be broken down properly. So like I said, it's going to go incompletely digested into your intestinal tract. It'll get uptaken into, unfortunately, the garbage can is not the toilet. It's your lymphatic system. And it goes into your lymph as opposed to nourishing you. And that's a direct quote from the studies. And now we have lymphatic congestion brewing, where the body's storing fat as reserve fuel around the belly and hips. It's compromising lymphatic flow, therefore immunity, and the body can't take out its trash. So you start feeling lymphy, which is why my rings get tight in my fingers. My joints begin to ache. I feel tired and lethargic. I have food intolerances, foods that I used to be able to eat, now I can't eat. I get bloated, I get gas, I get issues like that. I wake up in the morning, I feel stiff, and it takes a while for me to get going. These are all lymphatic issues. Premenstrual syndrome, PMS, is classically a lymphatic congestive issue. So many women who have this, and I wrote an article called "It May Not Be Hormonal," because there's what Western science tells us, there's a lymphatic detoxification that takes place from ovulation to the beginning of the menstrual cycle as a way for the body to kind of pre-detoxify the reproductive system, so the onus of reproduction doesn't fall only on menstruation. There's like a ovulation to the beginning of the cycle pre-detox, but it's detoxing through a lymphatic system channels. And if the lymph is already congested because of weak digestion, you're dumping waste into an already congested lymph system. So your breasts, which are mostly lymph, swell, they get tender, you break out, which is what's called the skin-associated lymph. That becomes an issue. Goes into the brain lymph, makes you a little bit more moody, tired, lethargic. All these PMS symptoms are like classic lymphatic system symptoms. So I started giving women an herb, it's called Mangista, which is an Ayurvedic herb for the lymph. And in a like significant amount of the cases, I wrote this article like 20 years ago, they would get significantly better. So I finally said, you know what? It might not be hormonal. These PMS issues may be lymph. And now we have science to show that the fatty acid delivery that helps you make hormones with, get it the good in and get the bad out, is all lymphatic based, which when you track it back to the source, it's your digestion and your stress. And when you start pulling each of those strings, the body, and you can breathe, which is the number one pump of your lymphatic system, and you bring that back online, the diaphragm back online. I mean, magical things, it's not magic. It's just the way the body was designed to function. But we keep, trying to give you anti-inflammatory for the inflammation. That's the final symptom of underlying weak digestion, lymphatic congestion, stress-related issues, overwhelming fight or flight responses. If you treat those, you don't have to do the anti-inflammatory thing,
Do you have a stance on feeding frequency? Like if we're trying to optimize digestion, I feel like I would assume people just constantly grazing nonstop all day long is probably not optimal in giving that digestive system a breather. So what do you recommend as far as feeding windows and frequency is concerned?
Years ago, the fad was eat little meals all day long. And thank goodness that has been disproved again and again and again, that we now have circadian medicine, which again is proving that if you eat a breakfast big enough to get you to lunch, and then lunch being the bigger meal of the day, because that's when biological clocks for digestion turn on, and then supper comes from the word supplemental or soup, and that would be a lighter meal in the evening. If we can hang out in that realm of a small breakfast, what you need to get to lunch, the bigger meal, and then a supplemental meal in the evening, you're going to be in great shape. They did studies where they front-loaded the same number of calories, breakfast and lunch versus lunch and supper. And the folks who had the front-loaded breakfast and lunch, same meal, same calories, lost significant weight, blood pressure was better, all aspects of metabolic syndrome were dramatically improved compared to the folks who did the food in the afternoon. When at sunset, the cooks go home. There's nobody there to cook the food. So whatever you put in your system at that late time of day, it's going to not be digested, and it more likely will be stored as reserve fuel or fat. So yeah, intermittent fasting, a great way. And this would be a seasonal thing too. Think about the amount of food coming out of the ground in the fall during the fall harvest is massive, right? And we're trying to store a lot of reserve fuel for the cold winter as insulation and reserve fuel. That's what everybody in nature except for us is trying to do in the fall. And then comes springtime, when there's nothing coming out of the ground, it's a low carb to no carb time of the year. I mean, try to find pizza and pasta coming out of the ground in the spring. It's not there. So this is the time when we're in an austere, calorie-restricted, All the religions do their fasting in the spring. This is a time to kind of dial down all the intake because nature's not giving it to you. And that'll force you into fat burning. And that fat burning stabilizes your mood, stabilizes your energy, gives you long-lasting fuel for deeper sleep. But if you're having meal and a snack and a meal and a snack and a meal and a snack, even if it's all healthy, your body's going to burn the meal and the snack and the meal and the snack. And then I'm going to say, okay, now I'm going to go to sleep for 8 hours. And the body goes, wait, I have a 2-hour feeding window. I don't sleep for 8 hours. You've been feeding me every 2 hours. So now I'm used to getting fed. So I've lost the ability to burn fat as a natural source of fuel. So that's why a breakfast, nothing till lunch, not lunch, nothing till supper, and supper, nothing till breakfast is a great way to maintain. If you want to lose some weight, skip the supper, have a breakfast, have a lunch, and then have nothing from lunch all the way to supper. And that would be the ideal way to lose weight, reset fat burning, and do a level of intermittent fasting or time restricted eating according to the biological clocks. Now, most folks recommend just skip breakfast. It's a lot easier. And I get that. It's a lot easier to have a cup of coffee on black coffee and get that caffeine going, fire up your fight or flight nervous system, and then just have, a lunch and a supper because it's more social to have that supper. And I get that. And it'll work. You'll lose some weight. But if you really want to align your biological clocks with nature's circadian rhythms, the way we were designed, breakfast, you want to kickstart this is well scientifically documented. This is exactly what Ayurveda said thousands of years ago. Have a breakfast, just enough to get you to lunch without hunger pangs. A nice big lunch that can be a little later in the afternoon even, and then nothing from then all the way to breakfast. You'll burn fat. You wake up. And we did published a study on that years ago. And not only did folks lose weight during that, we measured their anxiety, their depression, their sleep, their fatigue after work. And all those were dramatically improved just by getting off the meal and the snack. And that was back in 2000. We published that study. And that was when everybody was being told, again, a fad, eat little meals throughout the day. People would carry around little bags of celery sticks with them and carry that was already we was doing it. It was crazy. I used to travel a ton. I would look on airplanes and everybody would have their little bag of celery and carrot sticks or hummus or whatever. And they have their little snack. And then a couple hours later, another little snack. I'm going like, what human where does that make sense from the perspective of our ancient ancestors? They didn't have little snacks to carry around with them. It didn't make any. We have the ability to make energy last for a long, long, and that really is an indicator of longevity is how stable are you, without eating, in a fasted state. And of course, the spring would be the natural time to kind of to do more intermittent fasting or fasting, that would be the time that nature would say, yeah, we're trying to burn fat this time of the year. It's a great time for doing a cleanse, a detox, some calorie restricted, some, reduction in calories at that time which is coming around the corner, which is a great time to think about that.
I feel like for me, like I'll oftentimes transition to like one meal a day. So my fasting window is a lot larger and I'll make sure to eat quite a bit in that one sitting. But I think simply doing that makes me much less food focused. I'm not just fixated on my next meal. And I think so many people sell themselves short or shoot themselves in the foot because they're just constantly and chronically anticipating the next feeding window. And by definition, they start overfeeding because they're just fixated on food in general.
Yeah, I wrote an article years ago and I called that the lion diet, right? There's a lion sanctuary very close to us that I used to bring my kids to all the time. And the lions are just sitting there hanging out, just asleep. And they just eat like one big massive meal every 3 days. It's like, and I was like, wow, there's something to be said for that and exactly something to be said for what you can do. But not everybody can do that. You have to get your body to a place where you can actually have a really good meal and then have the energy last and be a good fat burner. Unfortunately, our culture is so fragile in its ability to burn fat. And so in addition to burn sugar, that we've created a stable of bugs in our gut that are super good at getting sugar out of the blood, which means quickly the energy goes up. But what goes up comes crashing down, and then you're hungry again. And you need more of, you want to get back to the top of that mountain and feel good again. So the brain pulls down the menu and goes, hey, I need more. You need more, either more caffeine or more sugar or chips or whatever. And now we're constantly doing this roller coaster ride. But what you've created is the system where your body has a nice meal. It's a solid meal. It's not a carb meal. It's balanced, and it gives you energy for the long haul. And your body's figured out a way to continue to burn your fat as a stable fuel for the longer period of time. And as you get older, you're young, but as you get over 50 into the second half, your requirement for protein and food will, on one hand, you probably need to get maybe 2 meals a day or something like that. It does change. As we get older, we need more protein. That's a clear fact. But your requirements for being able to eat 1 meal a day and make it last, you might start to feel like, you know what, I need a little bit more, because your metabolism will slow down and you will find that digestion gets a little bit weaker. We do age. It's not unnatural, and it's an okay thing. But, understanding that as we get older, we do need to make some adjustments into how we live life. Like, I'm not competing in triathlons and going ballistic like I did when I was in my 20s and 30s and 40s. I'm 69, so I'm now thinking about the second half and long term. I generally eat 2 meals a day, and that works for me. But I could do 1 meal a day, but I'd probably lose too much weight if I did that. And I want to maintain the bulk in the muscle I have.
Absolutely. When it comes to longevity, there's been this massive push as of late for the TRT, the HRT, males, females. And I don't know that they're, well, my frustration is that so many people default to that as the first line of defense before they look at anything else. And that's unfortunate. Like, I don't like pushing the easy button on everything in life. Do you feel like there's a place for that? Or do you feel like we're so far removed from the fundamental baseline basics that shouldn't even be in the conversation yet?
Well, it's really clear. And I've got an article coming out about this. Men are overprescribed testosterone and women are underprescribed and undertested for testosterone. So there needs to be some balancing there. Like you said, jumping onto, testosterone injections it's not without risks. It can increase, the aromatase enzyme, which can actually convert that extra testosterone into estrogen. Estrogen is a growth hormone. It can create cancers. It can make your prostate swell. So for men, there's real risks. And then when you look at the cause of that, it's stress, altering the production of what's called pregnenolone, which is the precursor hormone. And if you don't have that, you're not going to make the testosterone. So instead of fixing we just think of this thing so illogically, like, oh, the gas tank says it's low on testosterone, so I'm going to just inject it. Or the gas tank says I'm low on estrogen or progesterone, so we're just going to give it to you. Like, that was the cause of everything. We just need to pump more hormone into the system. Well, by definition, a hormone means that if you take it, it's going to suppress your own production. So from my perspective, it's like, I would never want to do that to someone, if you know what I mean, unless we really exhausted every possible way to get them to make the hormones themselves. Even during menopause, or, it's not like women stop making those hormones. It's just that the ovaries are retiring and your skin and the liver are now new manufacturing sites, which they don't know how to do this, are being asked to make progesterone, estrogen, and hormones to support them for the second half. It happens. It's been happening for millions of years without having to inject hormones. But if the lymph system's congested, you can't deliver the fatty acids, you can't take the trash out, you have poor digestion, you have a ton of stress, which blocks the production of pregnenolone, which makes these hormones. You're going to be finding yourself going to the doctor, and they just want to give you the simple answer, which is, oh, just take this and you'll feel better. Which does work on some level, but it's like, I think most people would say, can't we figure out a way to get me to do this and get my body in charge of this, as opposed to just doing the job for me and leaving me now dependent on that hormone for the rest of my life? And are there side effects and risks there? Yes, there are, for sure. So, that's the kind of the ancient wisdom, modern science piece of that, where we don't have to jump on the hormone right away. Let's do a little bit more comprehensive look at your digestion and your stress levels, your production of stomach acid, your lymphatic function, your diaphragm, which is the lymphatic pump, which is involved in delivering those fatty acids. And if all that's broken, well, then there's so much low-hanging fruit to do before you start injecting hormones. It's not even funny.
Yeah, completely agree on all fronts. Is there anything that you recommend as a litmus test for kind of gauging the health of the lymphatic system at the onset?
Oh, yeah. I have a lymph quiz at lifespot.com. Just go to lifespot.com, type in lymph quiz, and it'll ask you all the questions. And you can take that questionnaire and find out, how your lymphatic system doing and what part of the lymph might be broken, because it might be the lymph nodes, right? Which are where the immune response takes place. Could be the lymph vessels, could be the gut-associated lymph, could be the skin-associated, could be the lymph and the brain lymph. So I give you a questionnaire to kind of figure that out. And what's also really interesting, and you're probably all over nitric oxide, and you understand that you produce more of that when you breathe through your nose and all of that. Well, nitric oxide is that vasodilation molecule, which allowed you, when you were 5 and 10, to roll downstairs, play tackle football, whatever, and do it again and again and again and feel great. Now, as you get older, you lose that vasodilation ability, so you're less likely to roll downstairs for fun. You know what I mean? By 40, the average person has lost 50% of their nitric oxide production, which is that vasodilation ability to roll downstairs and have fun with it. By 75, you lost 80%. The lion's share of the nitric oxide in your body is actually produced in the skin lining the arteries and the skin lining the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system lives and breathes based on nitric oxide production. It's the vasodilation that allows the lymph to open up, so you can move the lymph through it, move the fatty acids through it, move the immune system through it, get rid of the trash through it. That's a huge responsibility for that system. And it's the largest circulatory system in your body. It's a huge responsibility. And it's all based on nitric oxide production. So, and that has so much to do with stress. There's so much like the foods we eat. Much of the nitric oxide production is converted from the nitrates, like in beets and arugula, into nitrites in your mouth. There's bacteria in your mouth that convert it properly. But if you're
Yeah, I've heard that most toothpastes are like one of the worst things that you can use to preserve nitric oxide production. Like getting rid of that from an oral microbiome standpoint is one of the easiest low-hanging fruit ways to optimize your own production of it.
right. So those things like, the mouthwashes and the toothpaste and the fluoride in the water, all that stuff is killing bugs in your mouth that actually, and here's another ancient Ayurvedic tool. When I first went to India in 1986, and it was like a different planet back then when coming from America to India. It was really wild. So I'm sitting in this little village and I'm watching this guy. He walks up to this fountain in the middle of the square and he jumps in the fountain in the middle of the thing. He starts taking a bath in the fountain. I thought that was really odd. So I'm just sitting there watching him take this bath. And then he has this little bottle of something that he was rubbing all over his body, which was oil. Then he takes that oil, takes a swig of it, and he starts swishing it around in his mouth. I'm like, okay. Years later, we have science to show that when you put oil in your mouth and you swish it, it actually pre-digests the coconut oil and the sesame oil to saponify and create an antiseptic that kills one of the major plaque-forming bugs in your heart and brain called Streptococcus mutans, which get into your heart, 61% of which gets in through the blood or the teeth or the gums, which aren't always as healthy as they could be. And when you do the swishing, you actually heal the gums, but you also preserve the good bacteria and get rid of the bad bacteria. And that allows the natural oral microbiome to convert the nitrates to nitrites and create the nitric oxide, where we just give fluoride, things that just kill bugs. The next thing you know, we've altered the microbiome here, which affects the microbiome down here. And now you're not converting. And is that part of the reason why we have such a decline in nitric oxide production. So when you tie in, like you said, nose breathing to diaphragmatic breathing, getting the diaphragm turned on, to eating the right foods, strengthening your digestion so you can convert the nitrates to nitrites the way we should, you can preserve that nitric oxide production, which is so key it was the 1998 Nobel Prize winning research that they called the panacea. And now we're just beginning to understand how critical it is for us as we age. And but it is so key to our lymphatic system. Another reason why they were right about the lymph being the link to longevity, but we don't ever hear that in Western medicine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. The more we learn, the more we just recognize the benefit of going back to our ancient roots, so to speak. Out of curiosity, to kind of round this out, how do you bookend your day? Like, how do you start your day and end your day? I'm assuming you got like a breathing technique or journaling or prayer, meditation. Like, how do you structure the front and end of the day?
So what I do is what I tell my patients is that once you get the rib cage moving and the diaphragm moving, you really only need like 5 minutes a day to keep the rib cage and the diaphragm independent of each other and support good lymphatic function. So I will wake up in the morning and I'll lie over on my back and I'll start doing some breathing, some very simple breathing. And so what the Western medicine says is that you want to do what's called maximum inspiratory breathing. Now, here's the interesting thing, Robert. If I tell you to do maximum inspiratory breathing, which means breathe in as much as I possibly can, like a Wim Hof type breath, that is going to trigger a fight or flight response. Flat out. So the Wim Hof technique, which is really cool, and I love what he does, that tells your body and trains your body how to handle high stress better. But it's based on that stress recovery model. That's really good at squeezing out professional athletes, but not good necessarily in the longevity because our life is so overwhelming with stress. We need to kind of figure out how to create the calm, the eye of the storm. So how do I get? The research shows if I do maximum inspiratory breathing, I can reverse the heartburn, GERD, reflux, lower my blood pressure, detoxify the brain lymphatic system, turn the lymphatic pump from my diaphragm on my whole body. I mean, it's a massive amount of research on your diaphragm that nobody talks about. I mean, how many times have you ever gone to the doctor for your heartburn and the doctor says, here's a breathing technique that's been proven to reverse your heartburn? I mean, that just doesn't happen, but it's literally in their medical journals. So here's how you do it. You have to do a maximum inspiratory breathing without triggering the alarm bells. So here's what you do. You can all do this with me right now. You can breathe through your nose. It's always going to be through your nose. And let's just fill the belly first. As I breathe in, my belly sticks out like a Buddha. Belly only. Now I'm going to go to my chest. Now I'm going to go to the upper chest. Now, to take it to maximal, I'm going to take little sips of air. And I feel a little pull into my rib cage. And then I breathe out. I want to get a full exhale so I can contract and narrow my rib cage and then contract my abdomen, squeeze every last bit of air out, nice, long, and slow. Squeeze it out. That creates an abdominal diaphragmatic cardiac massage as you breathe out. That triggers a vagus response, tells your brain, this is not an emergency. Flat out hard science. The easiest vagal response is doing exactly that. Then you breathe in again, belly, chest, upper chest, sip, 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 slow, and then narrow the rib cage, contract your abdomen. You can do it in front of your computer. You can literally do it in bed. That's like so cool. Because a lot of times you don't want to get out of bed right away or just hop out of bed when your eyes open. You want a little time to kind of, so you can just lie down and just start doing that breathing technique for 10 minutes, to maybe do 2 or 3 sets of 10 of those. And that would be a great way to start your day, just getting a maximum inspiratory breathing that's long, slow, and deep through the nose that doesn't trigger the alarm bells, but does fantastic science to get that all working. Must have about 30 or 40 articles on different breathing techniques on all the science at lifespot.com. This one is called The Best Diaphragmatic Breathing Exercises. That's a free article. We can go there and you can start you could watch the videos and learn more about that, but that would be a great place to start. That plus nose breathing while you're going for your walks or your runs. And
you'll do that same practice before going to bed as well?
no. Usually before I go to bed, I'll sit up and I'll meditate and I'll do some other type of like a longer, slower breathing to kind of be a little bit more settling. In the morning, I'm kind of want to get the body going. So this is a great way to kind of get the body going with maximum respiratory breathing. But at night, I want to settle my nervous system down. So I do a much longer, slower kind of breathing practice. But that's how I start my day. And then from there, it'll be, so I'll go work out. I'll go do some exercise, and that can vary between weight training. I definitely try to be very focused and specific. I used to go to the gym and spend hours there, but now I'm just really in and out of there in 30, 45 minutes. And more, I'm bringing those things home and doing home workouts because I'm being more targeted for my individual needs, things that I want to do. But and then depending on the day, I might meditate before I go to the gym. I'll usually do that breathing and then sit up and meditate, and then go to the gym, and then have breakfast, and then start my day. It doesn't have to be a lot of food, but just enough of a breakfast to turn the metabolism on. Tell your body, hey guys, we're eating. It's daytime. Biological clocks for daytime are on, and then go from there. And then, of course, the other thing that I always try to do is get outside. Or in the wintertime, we have one window. We get sun on the window in our house, and I'll go sit there and meditate in that window and make sure I get some sun on my body. And then I also have an infrared light in the wintertime that I use as well. So I have one of those ergs that's cross country ergs, that go like that.
Oh, yeah.
So I actually have an infrared light on both sides of that. So I'll get in there and I'll do that workout with the infrared light blasting me on both sides. I usually just do that in the winter when there's there's just no infrared. Unfortunately, incandescent light bulbs, which provided infrared light forever and ever, are now illegal in America. So we don't have any infrared light in our homes anymore. So you have to do something to negate that in the winter for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, we didn't even talk about light much, but yeah, that's a huge topic in and of itself. So, no, I totally agree with everything you're saying. It's very fascinating for sure. We'll have to do another one of these because we could talk for hours without a doubt.
Yeah, I would love that actually.
Awesome. Well, until then, where do people go to find out more about you? You said lifespa.com?
Yeah, lifespa.com, lifespa.com. And there's just type in your health concern and all the articles will come out about that. There's also a newsletter you can subscribe to, which has got, you put out 3 newsletters a week with a new article about ancient wisdom and modern science. So that's there. There's so much research. There's so much research that's kind of proving this time-tested wisdom and how to kind of, get away from the crazy fads that might end up being actually bad for you. So that's there. And of course, we have an Ayurvedic store where I've been formulating Ayurvedic herbs and skincare and written all my books and things. They're all there at the store at lifespot.com as well. So check it out and follow us on social, of course, as well.
Well, I'm definitely in favor of stepping away from the fads, the trends, the hypes that come and go. So kind of blending the world of what we are discovering in science with what we've known for generations and generations through ancient medicine. I'm all for it. So keep fighting the good fight for sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Robert. Really appreciate what you're doing. And thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Keep in touch. Take care, John.
Take care.